The night on the frozen moon was cruel, the kind of cold that could cut through clothes and skin, the kind of wind that pushed even strong men backward. Evan walked slowly through the thick snow, his boots sinking deep with every step. His breath turned into white clouds in front of him, and his fingers felt stiff inside his gloves. He only wanted to reach a research outpost 2 miles away, a warm place, a safe place. But the storm around him made every minute feel longer, darker, and more dangerous. Still, Evan kept walking. He had traveled through many alien worlds before. But this moon felt different. It felt too quiet, too empty, like something was hiding under the snow. The only sound was the wind screaming across the ice. Then he heard it. A sound so soft he almost thought it was the wind again. A weak cry. A tiny voice, a whisper. Evan stopped and turned his head. The voice came again, shaking and broken, like someone trying to speak while freezing. He felt a sudden shock of fear and curiosity. Someone was out there. Someone was crying for help. Evan pushed through the snow toward the sound. The cold burned against his face, but he didn't stop. Each step made the cry clearer. It wasn't an animal. It wasn't the wind, it was a person, no more than one. Then he saw them. 2 small shapes lying in the snow, covered in frost. At first, he thought they were children. But when he got closer, he saw their skin glowed faint blue under the moonlight, and their hair shimmered like frozen glass. Their fingers were long and thin, their clothes torn and half frozen. They were alien sisters, young, fragile, and completely freezing. The older sister, later he would learn her name was Lyra, was holding the younger one tightly, her body curled around her like a shield. Her lips were turning purple from the cold, and her eyes opened only halfway, struggling to stay conscious. The younger one, Miri, looked even weaker. Her small hands clutched a broken crystal device that flickered with dying light. Evan dropped to his knees beside them. "Hey, can you hear me?" he asked, voice shaking from the cold and fear. The older sister tried to move but could not. Her voice came out like a breath of ice. "Help, my sister, please." Evan didn't waste time. He lifted Lyra first, then Miri, and both of them were so cold they felt like ice sculptures. Miri's eyes slowly opened, and she whispered one word that stabbed straight into Evan's heart. Warm. The wind roared again, stronger than before. Snow swirled in circles around them. Evan knew that staying out here meant death for all 3 of them. He remembered a cave he had passed earlier, marked on old expedition maps. It was only a short distance away. He held both sisters close and began running, fighting the storm with every step. The younger girl trembled in his arms, and the older one kept trying to keep her sister close even while half unconscious. The storm grew wilder, the air felt heavier. It was almost like something in the darkness was following them. Finally, Evan reached the cave entrance. He rushed inside with the sisters and collapsed to the ground, breathing hard. The cave was dark, cold, but safer than outside. He placed the sisters near the inner wall and quickly started a fire with his emergency kit. Warm orange light filled the cave, and the ice on their clothes slowly began to melt. Just when Evan started to relax, he felt something. A faint sound at the entrance. He turned his head. 2 glowing red eyes stared at him from the darkness outside. And the danger had just begun. Inside the cave, the fire crackled softly, giving the cold stone walls a warm orange glow. Evan placed the 2 alien sisters close to the flames, trying to help their frozen bodies come back to life. Their skin slowly changed from pale blue to a soft warm shade, and the frost melted from their hair like falling stars. But Evan's eyes kept drifting toward the entrance. Those 2 glowing red eyes were gone now, but he knew something had been watching them, waiting. The storm outside only grew louder, like claws scraping against the wind. He forced himself to focus on the sisters. The older sister, Lyra, coughed and tried to sit up. Her legs were shaking and her breathing was slow. She looked at Evan with confused, frightened eyes. "Where are we?" she whispered. "In a cave," Evan said gently. "You were freezing to death. I brought you here." Lyra placed her hand on her sister's cheek, making sure Miri was still alive. The younger girl lay wrapped in Evan's outer jacket, trembling less now. Her small fingers were still holding the broken crystal device, as if she couldn't let it go even in her sleep. Evan noticed strange glowing markings on Lyra's arm symbols that seemed to move gently beneath her skin, like tiny rivers of blue light. He frowned but didn't ask yet. Lyra tried to stand, but she collapsed again. Evan caught her before she hit the cold stone. "Careful," he said. "Your body is still too cold." Lyra stiffened at his touch. Her people were taught that humans were dangerous, strange, selfish beings who never helped anyone unless they got something in return. But this human seemed different. He didn't look greedy. He looked worried. Why did you help us?" Lyra asked quietly. Evan shrugged a little. "Because you needed help. That's all." Lyra stared at him like she didn't understand such simple kindness. Before she could speak again, Miri woke with a small cry and tried to sit up. Her big bright eyes locked onto Evan, and she clutched his jacket tighter. "Human! Don't leave us," she whispered in a tiny voice. Evan gave a gentle smile. "I'm not going anywhere." Miri crawled closer to him, hiding behind his arm. She was scared, but she trusted him more than the cold darkness outside. Lyra watched the scene, her heart tightening. Miri never opened up to strangers, but she already trusted this man. Maybe she should too. Suddenly, Lyra looked toward the cave entrance. Her eyes widened. "Evan, the thing outside," she whispered shakily. It wasn't a person. It was a frost hunter. Evan stiffened. He had heard the name before, a predator species that lived on frozen moons. They hunted by sensing heat and movement. Some said they were smart enough to track a target for days. "How many?" Evan asked. "I don't know," Lyra whispered. "But the glowing eyes, that's how they look when they spot prey." Miri grabbed Evan's arm tighter. "They followed us." "They always follow." Evan moved to the entrance and peered outside. The storm was too thick to see anything, but he felt something out there. Something watching. Waiting for the fires. Heat to grow stronger. Lyra touched her chest, trying to summon her energy powers, but sparks only flickered weakly in her palm. She was too cold, too weak. "We need to stay quiet," Evan whispered. "The fire will help you both, but it will also attract the hunters." Lyra nodded but looked afraid. "Our crystal was supposed to call for help, but it broke." Evan looked at the cracked crystal in Miri's hands. It flickered with a dying blue light. Then suddenly, the crystal flashed once. Bright, powerful, like someone or something received its signal. Lyra and Miri stared at it in shock. "It shouldn't work," Lyra whispered, voice trembling. "Someone found us." Evan looked at them, then at the storm outside. Someone or something was coming, and it might not be friendly. The crystal's sudden flash faded, leaving the cave quiet again. But the silence didn't feel safe. It felt heavy, like the air itself was warning them. Evan kept staring at the cave entrance, expecting the glowing red eyes to return at any moment. Lyra pushed herself to sit upright, still weak but trying to look strong for her sister. "They are close," she whispered. "Frost hunters. Once they choose prey, they don't stop." Miri crawled closer to Evan, pressing her tiny hands against his arm. She was shaking again, not from cold, but from fear. "Will they come inside?" she asked softly. Evan didn't want to lie. "Yes," he said. "If they smell the heat." The fire crackled loudly. Too loudly, Lyra's eyes widened. "They can sense warmth from far away. This fire is a signal." Evan knew the fire was the only thing keeping the sisters alive. Without it, they might collapse again. But with it, the hunters could easily find them. Before he could think of a plan, a low growl echoed outside. A deep, icy sound that crawled along the walls of the cave. Miri covered her ears. "It's them," she whispered. "They followed us." Evan grabbed his flare gun and knife. His hands were steady, even though his heart wasn't. He moved closer to the entrance and stepped behind a large rock for cover. The growl came again, and then huge shape leaped into the mouth of the cave. The frost hunter was twice the size of a bear, with white armor like fur and long claws that glowed with frost. Its eyes burned red like two flames trapped in ice. Its breath came out like clouds of frozen smoke. Lyra gasped, grabbing Miri and pulling her back. "Evan!" she cried. The monster charged out. Evan fired the flare gun straight into its face. A burst of bright red light exploded, blinding the creature and filling the cave with heat. The frost hunter howled, shaking its head violently as the fire burned against its cold skin, but it wasn't enough. The creature recovered quickly and swiped its massive claws across the cave floor, sending shards of ice flying in all directions. Evan ducked behind the rock just in time. One claw hit the stone and cracked it like thin glass. Lyra tried to rise and help. She raised her hand, trying to summon energy, but only a weak spark flickered out and died. Her powers were still frozen. The hunter roared and charged at Evan again. Evan jumped to the side and slashed with his knife. The blade cut across its shoulder, but the creature barely felt it. It turned toward him with a furious growl. Miri suddenly screamed, "Stop! Please stop!" Her hands glowed blue. Evan had no idea what she was doing, but he jumped away as a burst of blue light shot from Miri's palms. The energy wave slammed into the frost hunter, throwing it backward against the cave wall. The creature roared in pain and confusion. Miri's eyes shone bright, but she looked terrified. I didn't mean to," she whispered. Her small body trembled from releasing too much energy at once. Evan rushed to her side, shielding her with his arm while still watching the monster. The frost hunter slowly rose to its feet. Its red eyes dimmed, then reignited with even more rage. It scraped its claws across the stone floor, preparing to attack again. Evan stepped in front of the sisters. "You want them?" he said, voice steady. "You'll go through me." The creature roared and leaped. This time, Evan used his last flare. He fired it straight into the creature's open mouth. The explosion shook the cave. Fire and smoke blasted out, and the frost hunter stumbled backward, howling in agony. Its icy armor cracked, and its legs gave out. It collapsed onto the stone floor and stopped moving. The cave went silent. Miri burst into tears and hugged Evan tightly. Lyra stared at him with wide eyes, unable to believe what she had seen. "You fought it alone," she whispered. Evan breathed hard but smiled a little. "I said I'd protect you." But Lyra's fear didn't fade, because she knew the truth. If one frost hunter found them, more were coming. The dead frost hunter lay still at the entrance of the cave, its icy body slowly melting from the heat of the flare explosion. The storm outside continued to howl, but inside the cave there was a strange, heavy silence. Evan checked for more threats, then returned to the sisters. Lyra sat against the wall, breathing hard, her skin still pale from the cold. Miri sat curled beside her, clutching Evan's jacket like she was afraid he might disappear if she let go. The firelight made their glowing markings shine brighter, and the cave no longer felt empty. It felt like a secret place were hidden. Truths waited. Evan crouched beside Lyra. "You okay?" Lyra nodded slowly. "Because of you, yes." Miri tugged at his sleeve. "You saved us again," she whispered in a small, shaky voice. Evan smiled gently and patted her head. "Both of you did your part too." But Lyra's expression remained troubled. Her eyes drifted to the broken crystal device in Miri's hands. The light inside it had flickered again earlier. It wasn't dead. Someone had seen their signal. Evan could tell Lyra was holding something back. Something big. You need to tell me what's going on, he said quietly. I can't protect you if I don't understand, Lyra hesitated. Her throat tightened. Talking about her past felt like reopening a wound she had tried to seal forever. But after seeing Evan fight for them, after watching him risk his life, twice she knew she owed him the truth. She lifted her hand, letting the blue symbols on her skin glow softly. Our tribe. We come from the northern kingdoms of this moon. We are called the Aurelin. Our markings are our life energy. They are also the reason we were hunted, Evan frowned. Hunted by whom? The Frost Hunters? Lyra shook her head. No, the Frost Hunters only follow heat. They are wild creatures. The real danger is our own people. That surprised Evan. More than the monster attack, Lyra continued, her voice low. In our tribe, everyone is judged by the strength of their energy markings. Strong markings mean power, status, respect. Weak markings mean shame. Miri lowered her head. Her markings. They say she has weak energy, Lyra explained softly. The tribe wanted to send her away. They said she was useless. Miri's bottom lip trembled. And you? Evan asked gently. Lyra looked away, her face shadowed by pain. Mine were too strong. The elders said a power like mine could only bring disaster. They feared I'd become a threat to their rule. Too weak and too strong, Evan muttered, so they cast out both of you. Lyra nodded, eyes glistening. They said we were unbalanced. They said we didn't belong. Miri hugged her. Knees tighter. They wanted us gone. Forever. Evan felt anger rise in his chest. So you were running? Yes, Lyra whispered. We ran far past mountains, glaciers, and deadlands. We tried to call for help using the crystal device. It's an old family relic. It can send a signal far across the moon, but, she sighed. We were attacked by Frost Hunters before it could finish. Evan looked at the cracked crystal. So someone might have received your signal? Lyra nodded slowly. Someone, or something. Miri tugged Evan's arm. Do you think they will come for us? Evan didn't know what to say. If friendly Aurelin found them, it might be safe. But if the tribe's soldiers tracked the signal, he didn't want to scare the girls. But he couldn't lie. They might, he said carefully. Lyra's expression grew serious. If it's the elite hunters from our tribe, they will not stop until we are taken or killed. Evan tightened his jaw. He wasn't going to let that happen. The fire flickered again, as if reacting to the tension. Miri leaned against Evan's side, trusting him completely. Lyra's eyes softened as she watched the scene, a strange warmth spreading in her heart. This human, they had known him only for hours, yet he felt safer than their own people ever had. But before that warmth could settle, a deep rumble shook the cave. The ground trembled. Snow fell from the ceiling. Lyra sprang to her feet. No, this can't be. Evan grabbed his pack and rushed to the entrance. Outside, through the blinding snow, he saw them. Lights, engines, shadows of soldiers moving across the ice. Aurelin elite had arrived, and they were coming straight for the cave. Asterisk, the snowstorm outside no longer hid the danger. Through the blowing white, Evan saw the shadows of tall armored figures moving across the frozen plain. Their glowing staffs cut through the darkness with sharp blue light. The Aurelin elite hunters, cold, ruthless, and loyal only to their strict laws, were marching toward the cave with steady, deadly steps. Lyra's breath caught in her throat. No, they found us, she whispered. Her voice trembled, not from cold, but from memories of judgment, punishment, exile. Miri clutched Evan's arm. Are they bad people? Lyra swallowed hard. Yes, Evan didn't waste a second. We can't stay here. If they corner us inside the cave, we're trapped. The fire flickered wildly as if agreeing with him. He grabbed his pack, pulled both sisters close, and led them deeper into the cave until they reached a narrow exit on the other side. Crack in the rock barely wide enough to squeeze through. It leads to the ice cliffs, Lyra said. But the path is as dangerous. More dangerous than staying here? Evan asked. Lyra shook her head. No, he nodded. Then we move. Miri grabbed Evan's hand tightly as they slipped through the narrow passage, the rock scraping against their shoulders. The freezing wind blasted their faces the moment they stepped out onto the other side. The world beyond the cave was a steep white cliff overlooking a long frozen valley. One wrong step meant falling into the deep ice ravine below. Evan lifted Miri into his arms. Hold tight. Lyra followed close behind, her eyes scanning the storm for threats. Her markings glowed faintly as fear and energy mixed inside her. Down below, shadows moved again, more elite hunters spreading out, searching the area. They're surrounding us, Lyra whispered. We must move fast. Evan climbed along the cliffside, putting his boots carefully on the narrow ledge. The snow tried to pull him down. The icy wind pushed against him. Every step felt like balancing above a bottomless pit. Miri buried her face in his shoulder. Lyra stayed close, her body shaking with cold and fear, but her eyes stayed fixed on Evan. He moved with confidence, even in danger. For someone they had just met, he walked like a protector who had known them a lifetime. Halfway across the cliff, a loud humming sound filled the air. Lyra froze. No, that sound. Evan looked up. A massive shadow drifted above them, smooth, oval-shaped, and glowing blue underneath. It was a tribal skydron, a scout machine that hunted from the air. It scanned the ice with a powerful beam that could detect heat signatures from kilometers away. If that beam touched them, it would alert every hunter nearby. We need cover, Evan said quickly, but the cliff had none. The drone moved closer, its searchlight sweeping across the valley. Like a giant glowing eye, Miri whimpered. Please, make it go away. Evan held her closer, but he had no answer. He pressed his back to the cliff, hiding the sisters behind his body, hoping the drone wouldn't sense them. Lyra whispered shakily, I can try something. Her hands began to glow, weak but determined. I can try to block the heat. Hide us. Evan turned to her. Are you strong enough? Lyra smiled sadly. I don't know. But she tried anyway. Her markings glowed brighter as she focused, pushing her energy outward like a shield. The air around them shimmered faintly. The drone passed overhead. The beam moved closer, almost touching Evan's feet. Lyra squeezed her eyes shut. Her body shook with the effort. The energy shield flickered like a weak flame fighting the wind. The drone paused. Evan held his breath. Miri held his jacket. Lyra held her power together with sheer will. Then dashed the drone. Moved on. It didn't detect them. Lyra collapsed to her knees, breathing heavily. Evan rushed to her side, steadying her. You did it, he whispered. She looked up at him with tired eyes. Not for long. They will come again. As if her words were a prophecy, a loud horn echoed across the valley, the call of the elite. Hunters rallying together. Evan looked toward the distant figures marching through the snow. They're closing in. Lyra grabbed his arm. If they capture us, they'll take us away forever. Miri's voice shook as she whispered, Evan, don't let them take us. He pulled both sisters close. We run, we don't stop. Not until you're safe. The storm roared around them, and the hunters moved like shadows in the snow. The real chase had begun. The wind howled like a wounded beast as Evan, Lyra, and Miri climbed down the narrow, icy ridge. Every step was a risk. The cliff below dropped into a deep blue pit of frozen spikes. The storm behind them grew louder, mixed with the shouts of the Arlen elite hunters pushing through the snow. Lyra's legs trembled as she tried to keep up. Her powers still flickered weakly under her skin, like dying embers. Miri kept her face buried against Evan's chest, too scared to look at the soldiers chasing them. "We're almost to the valley floor," Evan said, keeping his voice calm to steady the sisters. "Once we reach the plains, we move fast." But the storm had other plans. A sudden blast of wind knocked snow loose from the cliff above. It poured down like a white waterfall, and Evan dug his boots into the ice to keep from slipping. Miri squealed and held on tighter. Lyra gasped as the icy flow hit her legs, but she steadied herself with her hands. "Are you okay?" Evan shouted over the wind. She nodded, though her lips trembled. "I'm fine, keep going." They pushed forward until they reached flatter ground. The valley stretched out before them, wide, open, snowy. No cover, no hiding in behind them. The hunters appeared on the ridge like dark ghosts. Their blue staffs glowed with deadly light. One hunter raised a horn and blew, a chilling note across the valley. Another pointed directly at Evan and the sisters. "They found us," Lyra whispered. Evan grabbed her hand. "Run!" They sprinted across the valley, their feet kicking up clouds of snow. Miri bounced in Evan's arms, her breathing fast and frightened. Lyra ran beside him, pushing her weak body as hard as she could. But the hunters were fast too. Their heavy boots pounded against the ice. Their staffs pulsed brighter. They were trained for pursuit. They were born in this cold. The storm didn't slow them, it fueled them. "They're gaining," Lyra warned. Evan's lungs burned. The cold stabbed at his chest. But he kept going. He couldn't stop. Not while the sisters still believed in him. Then a sharp burst of blue energy flew past them and exploded against the ground. The ice shattered into sharp pieces, sending Evan stumbling forward. Lyra grabbed his arm to steady him. "They're trying to stop us," Miri cried. They kept running until they reached a frozen river. Its icy surface stretched far into the distance. "Across the river," Evan said. "It's our only path." "But the ice," Lyra began. "We don't have a choice." They started across the river. The ice creaked, groaned, threatened to crack under their weight. Lyra looked terrified. "It's too thin. It will hold," Evan said. "Just trust me." They reached the middle of the river when the elite hunters arrived at the bank behind them. Their leader stepped forward, a tall figure with silver armor and markings, brighter than Lyra's. His voice echoed across the ice. "Outcasts of the Aurelin tribe," he shouted. "Surrender now. You cannot escape." Lyra's breath hitched. "To their commander." Miri clung to Evan's shirt. "Don't let them take us. Please." Evan handed Miri gently to Lyra and stepped forward. He stood between the sisters and the approaching soldiers. "No one is taking them," he said, his voice steady as stone. The commander tilted his head. "A human stands in our way. Why risk your life for outcasts?" "Because they're not outcasts," Evan replied. "They're children who needed help." The hunters laughed coldly. The commander raised his glowing staff. "Move aside, human. This is not your fight." Evan didn't move. "I said no." The commander's eyes flared with icy anger. "Then you choose death." He swung his staff forward, sending a blast of blue energy across the river. Evan braced himself, but the attack never hit him, because Lyra and Miri suddenly stepped forward. Their markings ignited. A bright wave of blue and white energy exploded from their bodies, swirling around Evan like a shield. Lyra's voice came out strong for the first time. "We choose him." The energy shot outward, crashing into the hunters and knocking them back like falling dominoes. The commander fell to his knees, stunned. Evan turned to the sisters, shocked. Their power was blazing, awakening, unstoppable. Lyra met his eyes. "You saved us, now we save you." The tide had turned, and the hunters were no longer the strongest ones on the ice. The blast of combined energy spread across the frozen River like a rolling wave of blue light. The wind carried the shock through the valley, shaking the snow from distant cliffs. Evan shielded his eyes as the light spread outward, warm and bright, almost impossible to look at. When the glow faded, the valley became completely silent. The valley became completely silent. Elite hunters who had chased them for so long were now lying scattered across the snow. Some struggled to stand. Others groaned in pain. Their glowing staffs flickered weakly, the power inside them broken or unstable. Only one figure remained. Upright the commander. He pushed himself up slowly. The silver armor cracked along his shoulder where the shockwave had hit hardest. His bright markings dimmed as he looked at Lyra and Miri. Disbelief twisted across his face. "You should not have this power," he said in a low growl. "You were outcasts. Mistakes, unbalanced." Lyra stepped in front of Miri, standing, tall even though her legs still shook. "Maybe that's what you believed, but you were wrong." Miri held onto Lyra's hand, her eyes glowing softly. "We're not mistakes." Evan stepped a little closer to them both. "You don't get to decide their worth." The commander glared at Evan, his breath fogging in the cold air. "You interfere in the laws of a tribe you do not understand." "I understand enough," Evan replied firmly. "You hunted them. You tried to kill them. And they still showed you mercy just now." Lyra's markings flared slightly as she spoke. "We don't want to hurt you. We only want to live free." The commander looked around the other soldiers. Too weak to fight, the broken snow behind them. The glowing markings brightening on the sister's skin, he realized defeat. Slowly, he lowered his staff, and without another word, he motioned for his soldiers to withdraw. They disappeared slowly into the storm, like fading shadows swallowed by snow. The moment they were gone, the valley fell silent again. Lyra let out a long breath and fell to her knees in exhaustion. Miri hugged her tightly, tears gathering in her big shining eyes. We did it," Miri whispered. Evan knelt beside them both. "You did more than survive," he said softly. "You showed them who you really are." Lyra looked at him, her voice shaking. "We would have died without you, and I would have died without you," Evan smiled. "Seems fair." Miri giggled weakly and hugged him around the chest, burying her face into his jacket. "You can't leave us now," she said, muffled. Evan gently stroked her hair. "I'm not going anywhere." Lyra watched the scene quietly. Something warm filled her chest, something she had never felt before, a feeling of belonging, safety, trust, not with her tribe, but with him. The storm slowly calmed around them. The sky opened in patches, revealing soft silver clouds drifting across the moon's atmosphere. The wind softened. The snowflakes fell gently. Evan helped Lyra back to her feet, and the three of them began walking across the valley, away from the hunters, away from danger, and toward whatever future waited for them. As they walked, Miri held one of Evan's hands, and Lyra hesitantly held the other. Evan didn't pull away. After a few steps, Lyra finally spoke. "Evan, what will happen now? Where do we go?" He looked ahead, toward the distant horizon where faint lights of a human settlement sparkled. "To a safe place," he said. "A place where no one will call you weak or dangerous. A place where you can choose your own life." Lyra stared at him with surprise. "And you will stay with us?" Evan smiled softly. "Only if you want me to." Lyra squeezed his hand gently. "We want you to." Miri nodded hard, her voice bright. "Forever." Evan laughed quietly, feeling warmth spread across his chest despite the cold. Under the snowy sky, the three of them walked together, two alien sisters once abandoned by their own tribe, and the human who chose to protect them when no one else would. They weren't outcasts anymore. They were a family, a new one, a strong one, and their story was only just beginning.